Let's take a look at how we can work with gradients. Again, let's open a new document, just a blank document. Again, it's an ActionScript 3.0, and I'm in the small screen workspace so that you can see everything. And I'm just going to simply draw a rectangle. And I just want to draw your standard rectangle where it's in shape mode so that when I select it, I see my dots. I've drawn a rectangle, doesn't matter the color, and I've selected the fill color for it. I'm going to click on my paint bucket in the properties panel for my fill color. And I'm going to go ahead and select a gradient. Let me go ahead and choose the blue radial. Here we can see that it's a radial gradient, meaning that the gradient default starts from the center and extends out in all directions. I'm going to go ahead and open up this other set of panels here. I can collapse my properties panel for now. And we can see here that my gradient is now selected as my fill color, and we can also see where we can change the type of gradient that it is. So here we do have our solid color. We have a linear gradient, which is a straight line gradient, and we can see here down in the sample, it goes from one color to the other, from left to right. And you have these little color pens that you can click on, and when that pen is selected, we see the little black head on it. If I click color, it changes the color of that pen. So I can click here on my white pen on the right. Again, I can pick a different color, and now I've created a gradient with those two colors. And again, this is a linear gradient. And a radial gradient, again, goes from the inside out. And here now we can see the first color is the blue, the right color is that pink, and we can see the radial is going from the fill color from the left to the outer color to the right. And again, it's in a circular shape. And then we have a bitmap fill where you could actually import a shape or any type of bitmap and use that as your fill. Go ahead and cancel that. We're just going to work on looking at gradients right now. Okay, so we've got a radial gradient. We have this one here already selected on my rectangle. I'm going to click once, so just the middle is selected, and here we can see our colors. So it's going from that blue color to a black color, and again, by selecting the various pens, we can change that color and change the effect of our gradient that's selected here on the stage. On our tools panel, below the selection tool, we have what's called the free transform tool. If we click and hold on the free transform tool, which is that dotted line rectangle, there's something called a gradient transform tool. When I select that, you'll see I get a new set of tools on my selection of my rectangle, and we see this large circle, and we see some other symbols on that circle. So what happens here is I can adjust where my shading is working. So we can see that it's changing the location of my circle and how the dark blue is coming up. So I can change the location of that center of my radial gradient, and here on the right I can change the thickness or how wide that gradient is. Here on the next, that's the one with the arrow pointing left and right. This one I can change the diameter of my radial gradient by clicking and dragging. And then this one here, I can change the rotation. So I can actually adjust the angle of my gradient. So let's go ahead and change my gradient to a linear gradient so we can see how those changes take place as well with the gradient tool. So again, I'm selecting my gradient on my rectangle, and you'll see that our tools have changed just a bit. So I'm going to click here. I can change again the width of my gradient, and I can change the angle of my gradient. So I can customize my gradients, my linear gradient, which is working in a line, and I can adjust my radial gradient, which is working in a circle. So I can change the direction of my gradient. Now it's going up and down rather than left and right. And clicking here in the middle, I can adjust again the center point of my gradient by clicking and dragging. And again, this would change the width of my gradient. And now, again, because I rotated it, now it's going up and down. So once we choose one of the gradients that are available, or even if we're just working with a fill color, let's go to solid. I can come down in my drop-down menu in my color panel. I can choose a linear gradient. I can choose a radial gradient. And with the gradient tool, which again is found under the free transform tool, I can come inside my shape and I can customize my gradient even more. I can add additional colors here in my color panel by clicking underneath that color swatch that's showing my preview of my gradient, I can add additional pens. I'm going to click and drag to change the location of them. And again, when that pen has got a black tip on it, I can choose a different color. And now I've got 4 colors on my radial gradient. You can also adjust the flow of the gradient with these buttons. It's not going to show up very well here with my example because my gradient is too big, but try it with a smaller gradient and you can see how the pattern changes when you click on Reflect Color, Repeat Color, and Extend Color. Let me change this to a linear gradient. And now we can see how it goes from one color to another across that line. You could actually, make a spectrum of colors here. So it looks similar to a spectrum. Working in our color panel, you'll also notice that we have a couple of different ways that we can work in color. Here we have our hex number, where we can type in the letter and number combination to get our color if we know it. We also have the option to work in RGB, so if we know the percentages for our red, green, and blue. And then we also have our HSB color mode. Again, if you know your percentages for your hue, your saturation, and your brightness, you can put those numbers in as well. And there's a lot of different conversions available on the internet that you can find to help you convert your colors from RGB to hex if you know one number and you need the other. If I want to save this custom color swatch or gradient that I've created, I can click on the panel menu for color and I can click on Add Swatch. And now if I go back to my swatches panel, you'll see here that that custom gradient that I created is added to the list of gradients at the bottom of my swatches panel.